I was 8 years old the first time I realized I was afraid of my father. It wasn't the kind of fear that starts with shouting or fists or sirens. It was quieter than that. It crept in like humidity through a cracked window, thick, invisible, and inescapable. That night, he was just standing in the doorway. I remember the room exactly. Summer evening, hot as hell. One of those nights where the air sticks to your skin. The TV was on, something dumb playing in the background, laugh track echoing into an empty room. I was lying on the carpet, barefoot, legs stretched behind me, building a crooked house out of Legos. My mom was in the kitchen washing dishes, humming to herself like she always did when she was trying not to cry. And he stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, holding a beer like it was the last thing tethering him to the earth. He just watched me. Didn't say anything. Didn't move. Just stared with this slow, lazy blink like he was squinting at something from far away. His shirt was stained, probably from something he ate in the truck. His belt wasn't threaded right. I remember the sound of the bottle tapping against his wedding ring, over and over. Tap. 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 And I remember not moving. Not breathing. Because somewhere deep in my kid brain, I knew something was off. Something wasn't safe. His silence had edges. And the way his eyes moved over me, like he was trying to find something to be mad about, made the whole house feel smaller. My mother didn't say anything. She just kept washing the same plate. Her shoulders tight. Her back straight. She didn't turn around. She didn't have to. She felt it too. That was the moment. The shift. The moment when I realized that love had nothing to do with safety. That sometimes the people you need the most are the same people you have to tiptoe around. It would take me years to say that out loud. But I felt it then. Right there on the carpet with my hands full of plastic bricks and my lungs full of fear. That was the first time I thought. He could break me if he wanted to. And deep down, I wasn't sure he wouldn't. He didn't hit me that night. He didn't even speak. Eventually, he turned and walked out, slow and heavy. I listened to the fridge open, the clink of another beer, the creak of the recliner as he sank into it. But I didn't move until the credits rolled on the TV. My childhood was full of moments like that. Not explosions, tremors. Not beatings, unspoken threats. Like living in a house that might catch fire at any second. And being told not to worry because it hadn't burned down yet. I don't know exactly when he started drinking for real. Not the casual after-work stuff. Not the beers during the game. I mean the drinking. The kind that eats your brain from the inside. The kind that makes you disappear even while you're sitting right in front of someone. I used to think it started around the time his brother died. But Mom says it was long before that. Says he was already drinking when she met him. Says she thought she could fix it. Says that back then, he was sweet. Funny. Wrote her poems on diner napkins. Said she never knew anyone who looked so sad when they smiled. She says that now like it was a red flag. But I know she loved it then. We both did. Because he wasn't always the man in the doorway. There were good days. There had to be. I know they happened because I remember flashes. Him spinning me around in the backyard until I got dizzy and fell down laughing. Him showing me how to tie a fishing knot. Him holding me on his lap, letting me steer the car in an empty parking lot on a Sunday morning. He called me champ. Always champ. Even when I got older, even when his voice slurred. Even when he forgot my birthday. Even when he showed up to my middle school science fair drunk and called my volcano project a bunch of goddamn garbage. I still wanted to be champ. I still wanted to be the son he was proud of. Because when your father is broken, you learn how to build yourself in his shape. You learn to twist your spine to match his shadow. You tell yourself lies to keep the myth alive. You say, he's just tired. You say, he didn't mean it. You say, he had a rough day. You say those things enough times and they start sounding like facts. But the body knows. The body keeps track. The knot in your stomach when you hear tires on the gravel outside. The flinch when the front door creaks open. The instinct to hide your report card, your drawings, your voice. I started getting stomach aches around age 10. Couldn't eat dinner some nights. My mom took me to doctors. They said stress. Said maybe I was anxious. Said I'd grow out of it. I didn't. Because how do you grow out of fear when it lives in your house? One night, when I was 11, he came home mad. Not shouting. Not throwing things. Just mad. The kind of quiet, simmering anger that made the walls vibrate. The kind that made my mom pull me behind her like a shield. He didn't say what it was about. Just started slamming drawers. Accusing her of something. Nothing. Everything. The fridge door swung open, then closed. The beer cans disappeared, one by one. I sat on the stairs and listened. He called her a whore. She didn't flinch. He threw his keys. They hit the wall and fell with a sad little jingle. She didn't cry. And then he walked to the living room wall and punched it. His fist went through the drywall like it was paper. Left a perfect hole. A crater. Like a wound. Then he sat down on the floor and cried. I wanted to go to him. I remember that clearly. I wanted to put my hand on his shoulder and say something. Anything. But I couldn't move. I was rooted. Watching. Frozen. Scared and sad and guilty and angry all at once. That was the first time I understood what it meant to be ashamed of someone you love. We never fixed the hole. Years later, when the house got sold after the divorce, I went back. Just once. Just to look. The hole was still there. Covered by a framed picture of a lake. I laughed when I saw it. A bitter laugh. The kind that sits in the throat and burns going down. They didn't fix the damage. They just hid it. Like we always did. Eventually, I stopped telling people the truth. When friends asked about my dad, I said he worked late. Said he was private. Said we weren't that close. What I meant was, he doesn't see me. What I meant was, I'm afraid of what he'll say next. What I meant was, I'm tired of hoping he'll be better. But it's hard to say those things when you're a kid. So you keep quiet. You learn how to smile in photos. You learn how to shrink without being noticed. You learn to survive. And surviving becomes your only story. There's a photo of us that I still keep in a drawer I never open. It's from when I was maybe 4 or 5. He's crouched next to me in the grass, one arm slung around my tiny shoulders, his other hand holding a foam baseball bat. I'm grinning like a fool, missing one front tooth, and he's smiling in this real way, like nothing was wrong yet. I look at that photo sometimes just to remind myself that those moments happened. That we were okay once. That he was okay once. Because that's the thing. It wasn't all bad. There were days, whole stretches of them, when he was more than just the ghost I'd come to fear. He was fun. He was loud and goofy and made me laugh until my stomach hurt. He could be magic when he wanted to. He could light up a room with a story, make strangers love him in 5 minutes flat, charm the hell out of teachers, waitresses, coaches. People liked him. He had this fire in him, this charisma that burned bright when he let it. And when he turned that light on me, I felt like I mattered. Saturdays were the best. We'd wake up early, him still smelling like whatever he'd been drinking the night before, and we'd head to the gas station for snacks. He let me get anything I wanted. Slim Jims, peach rings, root beer. We'd sit on the tailgate of his old pickup and watch cars go by. He'd talk about nothing, football scores, the weather, dumb jokes he'd heard at work, and I'd eat candy for breakfast and laugh too hard at everything he said. Sometimes he'd take me fishing. Not real fishing. Just off the old dock behind the mill where the water was more mud than lake. We never caught anything, but he always said, "That's the point, champ. It's not about the fish. It's about sitting quiet enough to hear yourself think." I didn't get it back then. I just liked the way he said it. Like it meant something bigger. And in those moments, I loved him so much it hurt. He taught me how to ride a bike. Kind of. Really, he just held the seat for a few feet and then let go without telling me. I crashed into the bushes and skinned my knee, and he laughed so hard he almost dropped his beer. I was mad, crying, yelling that I wasn't ready. But he just said, "You were fine till you knew you were on your own." And God, if that didn't turn out to be a metaphor for everything. There was one summer where he built me a tree house. It wasn't much, just a wooden platform and a rope ladder, but I thought it was a castle. He called it the Fortress of Solitude. Said every man needed a place to go when the world got too loud. We spent whole afternoons up there. He'd bring a cooler, and I'd bring action figures, and we'd sit in the sun and listen to the leaves move like waves. Sometimes he'd read to me. Not kid books. Weird stuff. Hemingway. Bukowski. I didn't understand most of it, but I liked the way his voice sounded when he read. Calm. Strong. Like a man who knew what he was talking about. He made me believe he had answers. He made me believe he was invincible. That's the hardest part, I think. When the person who made you feel safest becomes the reason you flinch. When the man who once kissed your scraped elbow and told you monsters weren't real starts turning into one. It doesn't happen overnight. It's slow. Sneaky. Like watching rust spread on something you always thought was solid. But before all that, there were the good days. Sunday mornings were quiet. Mom would sleep in, and he'd make us pancakes from a box. He always burned the first one. Always. Called it the Test Flapjack. We'd listen to old rock records while the dog snored at our feet. He'd let me sip his coffee and pretend to be grown up. I thought he was the coolest man in the world. There was this one time, we were at a carnival, maybe 6 or 7 rides set up in the Walmart parking lot, and he won me a giant stuffed bear at one of those impossible games. Threw a baseball so hard it knocked over all the bottles in one shot. I still remember how he turned to look at me after, smiling like he was 10 feet tall. He picked me up and shouted, "Who's your daddy?" Like we were the only ones there. Everyone clapped. It was stupid, but in that moment, I felt like the luckiest kid alive. It was real. That's what I need you to understand. The love was real. The joy was real. He wasn't faking it. He wasn't a monster every day. He was my dad. And sometimes, he was really, really good at it. Which is what made the fall so brutal. You don't get your heart broken by strangers. You get it broken by the people who taught you what love was supposed to feel like. I clung to those good days like a lifeline. Long after things turned dark, I held them close. I recited them like scripture whenever he staggered through the front door smelling like the end of something. I told myself, "It's okay. He built you a treehouse. He read you poetry. He made pancakes." I let those moments carry more weight than the bruises they covered. Because the truth is, the good days didn't erase the bad ones. They just made them harder to understand. It's easier to hate someone who's always cruel. But someone who's both kind and cruel, who gives and then takes, who loves you and scares you, that kind of person splits your heart in two. I learned how to live in the in-between. To laugh in the morning and hide in the afternoon. To say, "I love you," and mean it, even when it hurt. I didn't know it then, but I was already learning how to survive someone who was slowly disappearing in front of me. Already learning how to forgive while bleeding. Already learning how to pretend. Because that's what the good days teach you. Not hope. Not healing. They teach you how to wait. And wait. And wait. For the man you love to come back. Even when you know, deep down, he's already gone. It didn't happen all at once. There was no big moment. No dramatic collapse. No screaming fight that ended it all. It was a leak. A slow, quiet leak in the foundation, invisible until you were knee-deep in the water wondering when it started and why no one noticed sooner. At first, it was just little things. He started forgetting stuff. Birthdays. Groceries. Picking me up from practice. He'd laugh it off, slap me on the back, say, "My brain's turning to mush, champ." Like it was a joke. I wanted to believe it was. But I remember sitting on the curb outside my school for an hour in the cold, watching every car pass, holding my backpack in my lap like a question. And when he finally pulled up, reeking of beer, his face flushed and his eyes hidden behind sunglasses he didn't need, he didn't even say sorry. Just handed me a warm Gatorade and said, "Don't tell your mom." That became the phrase. Don't tell your mom. He said it so often it stopped meaning anything. Like an echo. A reflex. He said it after he knocked over the Christmas tree in 2001. He said it after he cursed out my math teacher at parent-teacher night. He said it after he fell asleep on the couch with a cigarette still burning between his fingers and the carpet caught. Don't tell your mom. But I always told her. Not with words, with eyes. With silence. With the way I lingered in the kitchen after he stomped upstairs. With the way I stayed close to her on the nights he didn't come home. She never said anything either. She'd just sigh, run her hands through her hair, and keep moving like she was carrying something too fragile to put down. That's how it was for years. Cracks in the glass? Little fractures, spidering out across the surface of everything we built. Until the reflections stopped looking like us. I started lying for him without even thinking about it. At school. With friends. When their parents asked why he never came to games. Why he missed the spelling bee. Why I flinched when a locker slammed too hard. He's working late. He's sick. He's just tired. They nodded. They didn't believe me. But no one pushed. Small towns are good at looking the other way. And I got good at pretending. I'd sit at dinner tables with other families and feel like a fraud. Watch how other dads smiled at their kids, listened to their wives, stayed sober long enough to help with homework. I'd laugh along. Say all the right things. But deep down, it felt like watching a movie I wasn't in. Like being locked outside a house where you used to live. I started avoiding home when I could. Stayed late at the library. Rode my bike in pointless loops around the neighborhood. Sat on the swings at the park until the sun went down and the cold got sharp enough to make my fingers go numb. Anything to make the hours pass. Anything to delay the moment I heard his truck pull into the driveway. That sound, gravel under tires, engine growling, door slamming shut, it turned into a trigger. Even now, as a grown man, certain car sounds make my heart race before my brain catches up. Sometimes, he came home angry. Sometimes quiet. Sometimes, weirdly loving, like he was trying to make up for something, though he never said what. I remember one night, out of nowhere, he came into my room and handed me a pocket knife. Said every man should have one. Said his father gave him one when he turned 10. I was 13. It didn't matter. I took it like it was sacred. Like it was proof that somewhere in that mess of a man, he still saw me. Still thought I was worth something. The next morning, I found it on the kitchen table. He took it back. Said he didn't remember giving it to me. I didn't ask for it again. That's how it was. Giving, then taking. Smiling, then silence. Love, then the long stretch of nothing that followed. He was two people, always in rotation. You never knew which one would show up. The dad who taught you to fish, or the man who threw a chair across the garage because he couldn't find his wrench. It's the unpredictability that breaks you. Not the violence. Not the yelling. It's the not knowing. The walking on eggshells. The way your body stays tense for years, like a clenched jaw that forgot how to loosen. I remember waking up some nights to the sound of him yelling in his sleep. War dreams, maybe? He never talked about Vietnam, except once when he was drunk and told me he watched a man get his legs blown off and still kept crawling. Then he laughed. I didn't. He drank more after that. Mom stopped asking where the money was going. She stopped hiding the bottles. She stopped crying, too. That scared me more than anything, the way her face just went blank. It was like watching someone sink and learning to hold your breath, too. I started picking up the slack. Doing the dishes. Fixing small things around the house. Answering the phone when debt collectors called. I became the filter between him and the world. The translator. The clean-up crew. By 14, I could tell the difference between buzzed, tipsy, and black out just by the sound of his boots on the porch. By 15, I knew how to make excuses with a straight face. How to talk fast and low to cops. How to carry a man twice my size from the front lawn into the house without waking the neighbors. I wasn't his son anymore. I was his handler. And I told myself that meant something. That I was strong. That I could carry it. But I was a kid. A kid trying to keep a sinking ship afloat with duct tape and denial. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop the water from rising. One night, I came home and found the front door open. No lights. No TV. Just open. I stepped inside, called out. Nothing. Then I heard it. Not crying. Not shouting. Just breathing. He was on the kitchen floor, curled up, holding a photo of my mom in one hand and a half-empty bottle in the other. He looked up at me and said, "You remember when we were happy?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know if we ever were. Or if I just wanted it bad enough that I imagined it. He passed out there. I left him. Didn't cover him with a blanket. Didn't take the bottle. Just left him in the dark with his ghosts. That was the night I realized he wasn't going to save himself. That was the night the crack turned into a break. And I stopped waiting for the man I remembered to come back. The storm didn't wait for nightfall. It started in the afternoon, early summer, thick, wet air, that kind of breathless heat that makes your skin feel like it's buzzing. The clouds rolled in slow, dark as bruises, and the wind picked up like it knew what was coming. I was 16. Old enough to drive. Old enough to lie like a man. But still young enough to hope, deep down, that maybe this time, maybe today, would be different. It started with a phone call. Mom was running late from work. She asked me to start dinner? I said sure. Spaghetti easy. Dad was already home. Or maybe he never left that day. Hard to tell anymore. He was in the garage, which was his version of a cave. I peeked out the window, saw him sitting on the old stool by the workbench, smoke curling from a cigarette that hung off his bottom lip. A beer was sweating in his hand. Another empty already tipped over near his boot. I opened the fridge. No sauce. No meat. Just condiments, a half carton of eggs, and 3 more beers shoved in the back like secrets. I called out to him. Asked if he could run to the store. No answer. I walked outside, leaned against the frame of the garage door, and tried again. He didn't look at me. Just raised the bottle and said, "What the hell do you think I am, your maid?" I said nothing. Shrugged. Started to back away. He added, "Call your goddamn mother. She wants you fed, she can do it herself." It was nothing new. Just noise. Just another off day. But something in his voice, it cracked me open. Something about the way he spit out her name like it tasted bad, like she was the problem, like I was. I didn't plan to say anything. I really didn't. But the words jumped out before I could swallow them. "Why don't you try doing anything for once?" He turned so fast the cigarette fell from his mouth. He looked at me like I'd stabbed him. And then came the silence. That slow, tight kind. The kind where time stops breathing. He stood up, slow and heavy. And he walked toward me. Not running. Not yelling. Just walking. Like gravity was pulling him forward, and he didn't care where he landed. I stepped back. My heart was already trying to crawl out of my chest. I could feel the blood in my ears, the sweat on my palms. But I didn't move fast enough. His hand caught the edge of my shirt. Fistful of fabric. A jerk. And then he shoved me. It wasn't a punch. Not yet. But I stumbled back and hit the doorframe. Hard. Wood in my spine. A flash of pain. I looked up and saw it. His face. He wasn't my dad in that moment. He wasn't even a man. He was something else. Something hollow. Something that didn't recognize me. "You talk to me like that again," he said, voice shaking, "and I'll show you what respect means." Then he let go. Just like that. Turned around. Picked up his beer. Sat back down like nothing had happened. Like the air wasn't vibrating with violence. Like I hadn't just seen the monster behind the curtain. I went inside. Locked the bathroom door. Sat on the floor with my knees pulled to my chest and tried to catch my breath. I remember staring at the grout lines on the tile and trying to count them to keep from crying. It wasn't the shove that broke me. It was the knowing. The knowing that he could hurt me. That he would, if the switch flipped again. That something had changed and we weren't coming back from it. I didn't tell my mom when she got home. I didn't say a word. I just helped her make dinner like nothing had happened. We ate in silence. He didn't come inside. The storm hit just after dark. The house rattled. Lightning cracked. Rain came down like 1,000 fists. And he came inside drunk. Not the usual buzzed. Not slurry and slow. This was different. He kicked the door open so hard it hit the wall. Shouted something we couldn't understand. Then it started. Yelling. At first just noise. Curses. Accusations. Things that didn't make sense. He called my mom a liar. Accused her of cheating. Said I wasn't his. Said we were ungrateful. Said he should have left years ago. She stood her ground. I don't know how. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, tears in her eyes but voice steady. Told him to leave. Told him to go sleep it off in the truck. He laughed. Then threw his beer bottle at the wall. It missed her by 2 feet. Smashed near the sink. Bound glass sprayed across the floor like shrapnel. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. He turned to me, eyes wild. And then, just like that, he charged. But this time, I didn't freeze. I ran straight into him. Not a punch, not a tackle. Just raw momentum. I hit him with everything I had, all bone and rage and fear. We both went down hard. He cursed. Tried to push me off. But I didn't let go. I screamed something. I don't remember what. Something ugly. Something loud. My mom was on the phone in the corner. Crying. Yelling into the receiver. Then, red and blue lights. Sirens. Neighbors on their porches. Rain soaking my socks as I stood outside while 2 cops handcuffed my father on our living room carpet. He didn't fight it. Didn't look at me. Didn't say a word. Just let them take him. Like he was tired. Like he'd been waiting for someone to stop him. I watched the cruiser drive away and felt everything at once. Shame. Relief. Grief. Guilt. And something like freedom. But too sharp to call peace. My mom wrapped a towel around my shoulders. We stood in the doorway together, soaked and silent. The storm kept going. But inside the house, everything was still. Except the hole in the drywall by the kitchen, fresh and jagged. A new wound. A visible one. The first that couldn't be ignored. The cops took him away, but they didn't keep him long. Drunk and disorderly. Domestic disturbance. No charges filed. No one pressed anything. Just a holding cell and a signature. I guess a man has to break more than drywall for them to really care. He was back home by Sunday. I heard the truck before I saw him. Same sputtering engine. Same screech of brakes on our crooked driveway. I stood in the kitchen holding a chipped mug of reheated coffee I wasn't old enough to drink, staring out the window like I could will him back into being someone else. He walked in without knocking. Without looking at me. His boots were muddy. His shirt wrinkled. He dropped his keys on the table and disappeared into the back room like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't shattered a bottle against the wall, or been pinned to the carpet by his own son, or dragged out in cuffs under blinking porch lights. Mom didn't say anything. Just kept wiping down the same countertop. That's how it started. The silence. Not the kind of silence that fills space. The kind that drains it. No apologies. No conversations. No mentions of what went down in that storm. We just resumed the performance like the curtain had never closed. He slept more after that. Or maybe he just hid better. Some nights he'd crash in the truck with the windows cracked and a blanket over his legs. Some nights he'd be in the recliner with the TV glowing blue across his face, volume so low it may as well have been off. I stopped sitting in the living room altogether. I stopped asking for rides. For help. For attention. We started orbiting each other like two hostile planets. Same house, different gravity. Every movement was calculated. Every word weighed. I spoke less, not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. Every sentence felt like a gamble. Every interaction, a potential detonation. It was like playing chess with a live wire. Sometimes he was nice. Weirdly so. Offered to take me for burgers. Asked about school. Tried to make jokes, laugh like he used to. I didn't laugh back. Other times, he'd rage without warning. Slam a drawer too hard. Kick the fridge closed. Curse under his breath like the world was built just to spite him. By then, I wasn't afraid. I was something colder. Indifferent. That was worse. I stopped flinching. I stopped reacting. I let him rot in his own noise, and I think that made him angrier than anything else. We were at war, but it wasn't about shouting anymore. It was about who could go longer without blinking. Mom tried to play mediator, but she was too tired. Too worn down. She'd say things like, "He's trying," or, "Maybe just talk to him." And I'd nod, say, "Okay," and do nothing. Because I knew better. Trying doesn't fix what he broke. Talking doesn't stitch up the parts of me he hollowed out with years of neglect and rage. By junior year, I was out of the house most nights. Study groups. Part-time job. Anything to avoid that dim, suffocating quiet. I came home after midnight. Slipped through the front door like a thief. Slept with my headphones in, even if there was no music playing. Just needed something between me and the possibility of hearing him breathe. Once, around 2 in the morning, I found him on the back porch in the dark. He was smoking, watching the night like it owed him something. He didn't turn around. Just said, "You think you're better than me." I didn't answer. He repeated it. Louder. This time with a little spit in it. "You walk around here like I'm the piece of shit, and you're some goddamn saint." I stepped back inside and locked the door. Not because I was scared. Because I didn't want to waste my words. That was how we fought now. With silence. With distance. With the refusal to give each other the dignity of honesty. And in that house, silence was louder than screaming ever was. I think he wanted a reaction. He wanted me to explode. Cry. Punch a wall. Something. Anything. But I gave him nothing. Because I was too busy becoming everything he wasn't. I made honor roll. Got into a state university. Saved every dollar I could. I studied like I was building an escape tunnel. Every grade was a shovel. Every acceptance letter, a crack in the wall. He didn't congratulate me when I got in. Just said, "Don't expect me to pay for it." I nodded. "Wouldn't ask you to." I said it cold. Detached. And for a second, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not anger. Not pain. Shame. But it died quick. Because he never said sorry. Not once. Not for the broken nights. Not for the cracked drywall. Not for the bruises he left on other people's hearts. Not for turning our home into a prison where everyone walked on eggshells. The day I turned 18, he handed me a beer. Didn't say happy birthday. Didn't wrap it. Just held it out like a peace offering. I took it. We sat on opposite sides of the porch, drinking in silence, and the sky looked like it might break open again. I wanted to ask him something. Why? Why did you stay? Why did you waste yourself? Why did you make me your mirror and then shatter me? But I didn't. Because I already knew the answer. He didn't know how to love something without ruining it. Didn't know how to be held without breaking the hands that held him. Didn't know how to forgive himself, so he poisoned every place he lived in, including us. That's what addiction does. It doesn't just wreck the addict. It pulls everyone around them into its undertow and dares them to swim. And somehow I did. Barely. But the worst part? I still loved him. Even after everything. I still looked at that broken man and saw the ghost of the father who built me a treehouse. Who called me champ. Who won me a stuffed bear at the fair and let me believe the world was safe. I loved that version of him. And I hated myself for still needing him. That's the war no one talks about. Not the yelling. Not the fists. The aching loyalty. The way you keep fighting for a man who keeps disappearing. The way you carry a torch for someone who keeps setting you on fire. And still, you hope he'll come back. I left home on a Tuesday morning. Not because it was special. Not because of some big fight. Not even because I was finally ready. I left because the alternative was staying. And staying meant drowning in a house that had already taken too much of me. Mom helped pack the car. Folded my clothes tighter than they needed to be. Tucked in little notes she didn't think I'd find right away. Said things like, "I'm proud of you," and "Be patient with yourself," and "You are not him." She didn't say goodbye. She said, "Go." That was enough. He didn't come outside. Didn't offer to carry a box. Didn't even look out the window. Just sat in the recliner, beer in hand, TV flickering across his face. When I walked back in for one last check, he said, without turning his head, "Don't expect us to bail you out when you fall on your ass." I stood in the doorway for a second too long. And then I left. Just like that. The sky was overcast. The engine was loud. My hands were shaking, even as they gripped the wheel. I was free. I told myself that over and over. You're free. You're out. You made it. And I believed it, for a little while. But the truth is, no one tells you how loud silence can be when you've lived in noise your whole life. That first week in the dorm, I couldn't sleep. I kept waiting for something to crash. A door to slam. A voice to rise. I flinched when someone dropped a tray in the cafeteria. I apologized too much. I couldn't relax when it was actually quiet. Because when you grow up in chaos, peace feels like a trick. I told people I was close with my dad. Said he was old school. Said he taught me how to be tough. I laughed when I said it. They laughed too. I didn't tell them I woke up every night sweating, hearing his voice in my head. I didn't tell them I slept with a pocket knife under my mattress. I didn't tell them I spent every Sunday staring at my phone, wondering if he'd call, wondering what I'd even say if he did. College was supposed to be the fresh start. Clean slate. New name, new friends, new future. But trauma doesn't respect geography. And guilt is a long leash. I started calling home every week. Not because I wanted to talk to him, but because I needed to know if he was still alive. He never picked up. Mom would answer. Tell me he was fine. Which meant drunk. Or asleep. Or in a rage she didn't want to talk about. Sometimes she'd put the phone down mid-sentence. I'd hear him shouting in the background. A muffled crash. Her voice going low. Then she'd come back and say, "Sorry, laundry." Where were we? I never pushed. Because I wasn't there to stop it. Because I'd chosen myself. Because I'd escaped. And even though I knew it was the right thing, leaving, I hated how much it felt like betrayal. That's the thing no one warns you about when you break away from a broken parent, the voice inside that says you abandoned them. Even if they abandoned you first. I went home for Thanksgiving that first year. I shouldn't have. The house smelled the same. Cigarettes and sour beer and mildew that had soaked into the carpet. The same recliner. The same crack in the hallway wall. He looked older. Grayer. Bloated around the eyes. He hugged me, half-hearted, then asked if I had a girlfriend. I said no. He said, "Good, women ruin your life." Then he opened a beer and called me champ, like the years in between didn't exist. Dinner was quiet. Tense. Forks scraping plates and the TV humming low in the background. Afterward I found him on the back porch again, chain-smoking like it was a job. He said, "So you think you're better now?" I didn't answer. He laughed. that bitter kind. Said, "College boy. Thinks he's too good for the old man. Just you wait. Life'll knock you down too." I looked at him, and all I saw was a man choking on the weight of his own bitterness. A man who could have been more, done more, been more, and chose not to. I said, "I'm not better. I'm just trying." He didn't respond. Just looked out into the dark like maybe it would answer for him. I left the next morning without saying goodbye. And that time, it stuck. I stopped coming back. Holidays, breaks, summers, I found reasons to stay gone. Summer jobs, internships. Couldn't afford the gas. Anything to keep the distance. Mom came to visit me sometimes. She never stayed long. Always seemed in a rush to get back, even when I begged her to stay an extra day. I knew she was afraid of what might happen if she left him alone too long. We didn't talk about it much. We'd dance around it. She'd say things like, "He's complicated," or, "He has his demons," and I'd nod like that made it okay. But it didn't. One night, sophomore year, I got drunk for the first time. Really drunk. It was a party. Loud music, bad beer, sweaty people I barely knew. At some point, I ended up in the bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror. And I saw him. Not literally. But something in the tilt of my face, the way my jaw clenched, the hollowness in my eyes, it felt like him. I threw up. Not from the booze, but from the fear. I didn't drink again for a long time after that. Because the last thing I ever wanted was to become him. But that's the other thing no one tells you. Escaping someone doesn't mean you're free of them. You carry their voice in your head. Their habits in your hands. Their rage in your ribs. And no matter how far you run, you hear them whisper, "You'll never outrun me." And some days you believe them. But some days you don't. Some days you wake up and breathe a little easier. Some days you choose better. Say no. Say sorry. Say, "I need help." Say, "I love you." And mean it. Some days you realize escape isn't a place. It's a decision. One you have to make over and over again. Because healing isn't a finish line. It's a fight. And some of us were raised in a war. It had been almost 3 years since I last saw him. I was 21. Living 2 towns over in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat that always smelled like burnt dryer sheets. Working a nothing job, drinking more coffee than water, pretending I had my shit together. I didn't. But I was surviving. That counted for something. Father's Day crept up like it always did, quiet, unavoidable. I didn't celebrate it. Didn't even acknowledge it. I usually spent the day doing laundry, avoiding calls, shutting off the part of my brain that wanted to scroll through other people's Instagram posts about the best dad in the world. But that year something changed. It started with a phone call. Not from him. From Mom. I hadn't heard her sound like that in a long time. Her voice was tight, clipped around the edges. Like she was holding something back with both hands and it was still slipping through. "He's not doing well," she said. I asked what that meant. She didn't answer at first. Just sighed. Then, "He's drinking more. He's talking to himself. Said he's hearing things." I stayed quiet. She said, "I think you should see him." And I wanted to laugh. I wanted to ask her why. Why now? What did she expect? That I'd come home, hug him, and we'd ride off into some Hallmark movie ending where all the bruises became metaphors and the pain dissolved into a teachable moment. I said, "I don't think I can do that." And she said, "I'm not asking you to fix him. I just don't want you to regret not saying what you need to say." Regret. That word landed harder than it should have. So I went. Not out of love. Out of obligation. Out of that stubborn, loyal part of me that still held out the tiniest ember of hope, if not for healing, then for closure. It was a hot day. The kind of heat that made the road feel soft under your tires. Everything looked the same. Same sun-faded signs. Same leaning mailbox. Same crooked screen door that never closed right. I parked across the street. Sat in my car for 10 full minutes before I got out. When I finally knocked, it took a long time for anyone to answer. And then he opened the door. Or maybe what was left of him did. He looked small. Not just thinner. Smaller. Like he'd been shrinking from the inside out. His skin hung loose, eyes sunken, beard overgrown and patchy. But the worst part was how he smiled. Like nothing had happened. Like 3 years of silence hadn't passed between us. "Champ," he said. I almost turned around. But I didn't. I walked in. Sat in the kitchen. Same warped floorboards. Same flickering light. Same smell, beer, smoke, loneliness. He sat across from me, picking at a spot on the table. We didn't say anything at first. Then he said, "Your mom told you, huh?" I nodded. She always thinks the worst. I didn't respond. He looked at me then, really looked. Eyes glassy but locked in. "You hate me." It wasn't a question. I waited, then said, "Some days." He nodded. Accepted it like an overdue bill. "I did my best," he said. "No," I replied. "You did what was easy." His jaw tightened. "It wasn't easy." I leaned in, voice low. "It was easier than showing up. Easier than being present. Easier than fixing yourself." He looked away. "Do you think I wanted to be like this?" he said. "I don't care what you wanted," I said. "I care about what you did." He was quiet for a while. Then, "I never knew how to be a father. And I was a kid. That wasn't my job to teach you." That landed. I saw it in the way his shoulders dropped. The way he blinked too many times in a row. "I didn't know how to love anything without ruining it," he whispered. And I said, "Yeah. I know." He started crying. Not loud. Just tears slipping out the sides of his eyes while he stared at the floor. I didn't go to him. Didn't reach across the table. Didn't offer comfort. Because I'd done that already, over and over, for a man who never met me halfway. "You broke me," I said. "In ways I'm still figuring out." He nodded. "I know. I flinch when people raise their voice. I can't stand the sound of beer cans opening. I apologize too much. I hold everything in. I don't trust anyone to stay." He covered his face with his hands. I kept going. "You turned our house into a war zone. You taught me how to lie to protect someone who never protected me. You made me think love meant surviving someone." He didn't speak. Just sat there. A mess of breath and sweat and tears. Finally I said, "I came here to say I don't hate you." His head lifted. Eyes rimmed red. "But I also don't forgive you." "Not yet." He nodded again. Smaller this time. "I just needed you to hear it. That you hurt me. That you broke something in me that I'm still trying to fix." And then I stood up. He asked, voice shaking, "Will I ever see you again?" And I said, "I don't know." Then I walked out. The sun was still hot. The air still thick. I got in my car, turned the key, and just sat there for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I felt like I'd just dropped a body I'd been carrying my entire life. And it left me hollow. But lighter. Sometimes closure isn't a hug or a handshake or a cinematic moment of forgiveness. Sometimes closure is leaving. And not going back. It was a Thursday when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. I was on the couch, half asleep, some dumb movie playing in the background. The screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize, local area code, but not saved. I stared at it until it stopped ringing. Then it buzzed again. Same number. I let it go to voicemail. 3 minutes later, Mom called. Her voice was brittle. No build-up, no soft entry. "He's in the hospital." The words dropped like stones. She didn't cry. She didn't pause. Just gave me the basics, collapsed in the driveway. Neighbor saw him, called an ambulance. Blood alcohol over .40. Liver failing. He was unconscious. breathing, but barely. They don't know if he's gonna make it, she said. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Grief? Anger? Closure? All I felt was cold. Not numb. Not shocked. Just cold. Like the warmth had finally bled out of this story. She said, "You should come." I asked why. She didn't answer. I went anyway. The hospital was quiet in that sterile way all hospitals are. Too clean. Too bright. Everything smelling like bleach and loss. They had him in a room at the end of the hall. Machines humming. Wires snaking into his arms. Oxygen hissing quietly from the tubes in his nose. He looked even smaller than before. Shallow skin. Bones pressing through sheets. Fingers twitching like they were chasing something in a dream. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I walked in. Sat in the plastic chair beside the bed. Crossed my arms. Waited. I don't know what I thought would happen. Maybe some moment of divine clarity. Maybe I'd feel that spark, that connection I'd spent so long pretending was dead. But there was nothing. Just the beep of the heart monitor. I looked at him and thought, this is what's left. Not of a man. Of a wound that never learned how to close. Mom sat with me for a while. She looked tired. More tired than I'd ever seen her. Years of carrying him etched into her face like a second skin. He started drinking mouthwash, she said, when the liquor ran out. I nodded. Sometimes I think he was trying to die. I didn't correct her. Because sometimes I thought the same thing. She left to get coffee. I stayed. Just me and him and the machines keeping him tethered to the world. I watched his chest rise and fall. Listened to the slight rattle in his breath. Wondered if he could hear me. Wondered if he'd want to. I leaned in, voice low. You did this to yourself. His eyes didn't open. You had chances. More than most people get. Still nothing. And you pissed them away. Silence. And I still came. God help me, I still fucking came. That's what killed me. That no matter what he did, no matter how many times he cut the wire between us, I still wanted something. Not redemption. Not even love. Just acknowledgement. Just to know he saw the damage. He didn't. Not then. Not ever. A nurse came in and told me visiting hours were almost up. As I was leaving, she handed me a manila envelope. Found this in his coat pocket, she said. Inside was a voicemail transcript. Printed. Faded ink. I recognized the date. It was from 6 months earlier. A call to my number. I never got it. Maybe my voicemail was full. Maybe he hung up before it sent. But there it was. A message. I read it standing in the parking lot, engines still running. Hey, I know I'm not supposed to call. But I saw your graduation photo. Your mom keeps it on the fridge. You look good. Like your mom. Strong. I'm proud of you. I don't expect you to believe that. I just wanted to say it. I just wanted to hear your name in my head one more time. It wasn't enough. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a reckoning. It was too little, too late. But it was something. And that made it worse. He made it through the night. Stayed unconscious for 2 more days. The doctors said he was stable, but not recovering. That the damage was long-term. That the drinking had eaten through him like acid. That if he pulled through, he'd never be the same. Mom asked if I wanted to stay longer. I didn't. I left him there. Just like he'd left me, over and over again. Not out of vengeance. Out of self-preservation. Because there's a point where mercy becomes self-harm. And I'd spent too long bleeding for a man who didn't know how to stop the cut. Back in my apartment, I played the voicemail one more time. The recording was glitchy, his voice warped from age and static. But I listened. Not because I needed it. Because I needed to end it. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger. Out of peace. Because I was done waiting for him to become someone he was never willing to be. And if death came for him now, I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't write a eulogy about a man he never was. I'd grieve for the boy I used to be. The boy who waited by the window. The boy who believed in comebacks. The boy who carried the torch and burned himself trying to keep it lit. I'd bury that boy. Not him. Because truth is, he'd been gone a long, long time. I don't remember the exact day I forgave him. There was no flash of light. No dramatic release. No letter written and burned in some symbolic backyard ritual. It was slower than that. Smaller. Like turning a key you forgot you'd been carrying. I think it started in the grocery store. I was reaching for a jar of peanut butter, bottom shelf, smooth, not crunchy, and some kid came running around the corner, nearly knocked me over. His dad followed, laughing, saying, "Slow down, kiddo," and ruffled his hair before picking him up. It was nothing. Just a moment. But it hit like a brick. I stood there holding the jar like it weighed 100 pounds, throat tight, eyes burning. And all I could think was, I never got that version of a father. And then, quietly, but maybe I could be that version of a man. That was the shift. The beginning of the letting go. Not for him. Not for closure. For me. Because I couldn't keep carrying the ache. Couldn't keep treating my own life like a crime scene he left behind. I used to think forgiveness meant saying, "It's okay." But it's not. It was never okay. The things he did. The things he didn't do. The way he disappeared in the same room he lived in. The way I had to shrink just to stay safe. None of that was okay. Forgiveness, for me, meant this. I refused to let your failure become my future. It meant choosing not to be like him. It meant holding my own heart like he never held mine. It meant telling myself, in the dark, with no one else listening, "You deserve better. And I'm sorry you didn't get it." There was a time I used to dream about confrontations. Late-night fantasies where he'd sit across from me, older, smaller, tears in his eyes. He'd say all the right things. Apologize for everything. Hold my shoulder. Mean it. I held on to that dream for years. Then one day, I let it go. Because the truth is, he never said sorry. Not once. Not when I was a kid. Not when I left. Not even from a hospital bed he might have died in. And still, I forgave him. Not with fanfare. Just quietly. Like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. It's strange. The moment I stopped waiting for him to change was the moment I started to. I started going to therapy. First session, I sat there staring at the books on the shelf. Couldn't talk. Couldn't explain why I was there. Just said, "My dad drank a lot." The therapist nodded. "What else?" "He was mean." "Sometimes." "What else?" "He wasn't there. Even when he was." That opened something. Slowly, session by session, I began peeling myself open. Not to relive it, but to name it. To take the chaos of my childhood and give it structure. Language. Edges. He taught me a kind of love that bled. So I had to teach myself a new kind. There were nights I still heard his voice. Usually when I was tired. When my guard was down. In my head, he'd say things like, "You think you're better than me?" Or, "Nobody's gonna want someone like you." Or, "You'll end up alone." For a while, I believed him. Then one night, lying in bed with someone who loved me anyway, I whispered into the dark, "That voice isn't mine." And it was gone. Not forever. But far enough. I saw him once after the hospital. Brief. He was in line at a pharmacy. Holding a bottle of vitamins, and shaking like his hands weren't his anymore. He looked like someone who used to be someone. He didn't see me. I stepped out of line and walked away. Not out of fear. Because there was nothing left to say. A few months later, Mom called again. Said he was moving into assisted housing. Liver gone. Eyes yellow. No car. No job. No real memory left of how it all went wrong. She asked if I wanted to visit. I said no. But I didn't feel guilty. Because I had already buried the part of me that needed him to be anything other than what he was. And what he was sick. Not just addicted. Not just angry. Sick. Sick in ways no one could fix. Not me. Not her. Not him. And you can love a sick person without inviting the illness into your home. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a moment. It's maintenance. It's a choice you make every day. When someone raises their voice and you don't flinch. When you have a drink and know when to stop. When you feel the pull to disappear and stay anyway. When you love someone and let them. That's forgiveness. And it doesn't need their permission. It's yours. People think forgiveness is about them. But it's not. It's about you. About not waking up with their voice in your head. About not letting anger steal what little peace you've managed to grow. About planting something where the fire was. Not because the ground deserves it. But because you do. I'll never forget him. And I won't lie for him either. But I won't carry him anymore. He lived the life he chose. I'm living the one I'm building. That's the difference. That's the release. That's the freedom. That's the kind of forgiveness that no one can take from you. If I ever have a kid, I won't tell them about my father right away. I won't say the word alcoholic when they're too young to understand it. I won't show them pictures of him holding me with a beer still clutched in one hand. I won't play them the voicemail or explain the way silence can hum louder than screams. Not at first. I'll wait. Wait until they ask me where I learned to raise my voice and then bite it back. Where I learned to keep breathing when the door slams. Where I learned to leave the room, not because I'm angry, but because I'm scared I'll become someone I swore I never would. Then I'll tell them. I'll tell them about the man I come from. And I'll tell them about the one I became instead. I still hear him sometimes. Not his voice, his patterns. The rhythm of footsteps down a hallway. The pause before a slammed drawer. The sigh before the storm. I feel him in my worst moments. When I lose patience. When I shut down. When I feel like disappearing. He lives in my jaw, the way I clench it when I don't know how to say what I'm feeling. He lives in my hands, the way I grip the steering wheel too tight on bad days. But I talk to him now. I say, not today. You don't get to drive. You don't get to shape this love. You don't get to live through me. Because I've earned my name back. Because I've built something he never taught me how to build. A life with soft edges. A heart that doesn't close when it hurts. A love that doesn't need to control to feel real. I used to think cycles were destiny. That whatever broke him would break me. But I've learned that blood is not prophecy. And silence is not inheritance. I've learned that being a man is not about being hard. It's about staying soft, even when the world begs you to calcify. It's about facing the mirror and saying, you get to write your own ending. Sometimes I write letters I'll never send. To him. To the boy I was. To the man I might still become. They all say the same thing. You survived. And that was enough. But now you get to live. I keep the photo of us in the bottom drawer. The one where I'm 5. The one where he still looks human. The one where he still tried. I don't hate it. I don't love it either. But I look at it sometimes when I forget that people are allowed to be more than one thing at once. He was a father. And he was a wound. And both of those things can be true at the same time. I don't talk about him much anymore. Not because I'm hiding anything. But because he doesn't define me anymore. The truth is, I'll always carry the story. But I won't pass it down like an heirloom. If I ever have a kid, I'll tell them. Your grandfather was a complicated man. And then I'll tell them about the way I held them the day they were born. The way I cried the first time they said, I love you. And meant it. The way I chose every day to be different. To be better. To be here. I'll tell them I made mistakes. But I stayed. I'll tell them that love means presence. Love means repair. Love means you keep showing up, even when it's hard. Especially then. There is no dramatic ending to this. No final confrontation. No tidy bow. There's just me. And the choice I make each day to not let what hurt me become what hurts others. There's just this quiet daily vow. I am not him. And that is enough.